Well, good afternoon. Today we're going to talk about salinity, how to test our salinity, how to make sure that our equipment is calibrated and maintained properly so that we don't get false readings and make the mistake of doing damage to our reef tanks. I wanted to share this today because I actually made a mistake. And I use a refractometer and I was calibrating it, constantly cleaning it the way I'm supposed to. And I noticed one day that my corals just weren't looking right. And I thought, well, there's something wrong. So I went through all the tests, calcium, magnesium, alkalinity, phosphates, nitrates, went through the whole list. Everything was fine. So I, of course, went ahead and sent in an ICP test. And the results made me go back to my refractometer and look at my salinity and figure out what was going on. So let me go ahead and bring up our slideshow. And there's many different types of ways to test our salinity. And the first one on the top left are, of course, the lever testers. They're the cheap ones you can get at Petco, at Walmart. They use it's a hydrometer with a little lever, arm lever on it. And they work good if you just have a fish-only tank and it's not that big of a deal. However, if you have sensitive fish like seahorses, pipefish, if you have snails at your specialty, and maybe sand conchs, tiger snails, stuff like that, got to be careful with the salinity. If it gets too high, mollusks, clams, scallops will suffer. They'll dry up literally from too much salinity, and it'll kill them. So, but anyway, other than that, if you just have a fish-only tank, those are fine. If you have corals, I'd stay away from the cheap ones. You get what you pay for. On the top right side of the image, you see the cheap digital testers. You can find them all over eBay and Amazon. Now, those salinity testers will work. They usually are coupled with pH testers, temperature, ORP, stuff like that, TDS. However, when it comes to salinity, pH, you have to constantly clean them, keep them very clean, rinse them off when you're done. Most of the times they have to stay suspended, the probes, in RODI water, or at least have a wet cover put on the probe itself on the bottom so that your sensors don't dry out. Also have to calibrate them constantly. So you have to calibrate them before every use. You have to make sure the batteries are up to date. And most importantly, and this applies to all of our salinity testers, is we have to use a calibration solution that goes with that particular tester. And that's important across the board. So now we're going to talk about that because I made that mistake. My salinity was off. My tester said it was perfect, and I was doing damage because I wasn't using the right reagent or calibration solution for my salinity tester. Now the cheap ones again are good. You can get them from anywhere from about $20 to $50. You can buy them all over Amazon. And again, you get what you pay for. If you don't calibrate them right, even when you do, sometimes there's a pretty big difference from one reading to the next, depending on the temperature, on when you put it in, and sometimes they just wig out and don't give you a good reading. So you may want to take 4 or 5 readings and kind of see which the majority of the readings give you. Now the next ones are the real nice ones, the expensive ones like the Hanna and the Milwaukee testers. Those are wonderful testers. They start about $150 a piece. Again, you have to clean them with RODI water when you're done. A couple of their models you do have to keep suspended in RODI water when they're not in use. And you also have to calibrate them on a regular basis. Maybe not as often as the cheap testers, but at least once a week, once every couple of weeks, I would definitely calibrate it. And if you're using the Hanna tester, use Hanna's calibration fluid. If you're using a Milwaukee tester, use Milwaukee's calibration solution. If you use a solution that's made by another manufacturer, or if you go into eBay or if you go into Amazon and you purchase a generic solution that is 35%, 1.026, and well, I'm gonna use that to calibrate my instrument, you're probably going to have a problem. And I ran into that myself. So just a heads up, we're going to talk about that in just a second. We also have a do-it-yourself solution you can make with Morton salt so that you can make your own calibration solution that works pretty much on the money every time. But you have to use Morton iodized salt. You can't use generic salt. We'll talk about that in just a second. The fourth ones that we have are the floating hydrometers, which are very accurate. They don't need to be calibrated, so that's a good thing. However, because they're glass, they have a tendency of breaking. They're very fragile. Sometimes they break when you're having them shipped to your house. If you put them in your display tank and they smack against the glass, hit a coral or a rock, they can break inside your display tank. The best way to use those is to take water out of your display, put it in a colander, a plastic one, and then float your hydrometer inside of that colander. Be very careful with it. Make sure that there are no bubbles on the hydrometer. That's true with the levered hydrometers. Also true with the refractometers. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But it's very important that you make sure there's no bubbles on that it's not touching the sides. It can affect, of course, your final test and outcome. And make sure that it's completely submerged and then floating inside of your test solution. And they are very accurate. One of the best ones really is Tropic Marin makes one. It's awesome. It comes with its own colander, so you can fill it with water. I think it's 300 milliliters, something like that, then float the hydrometer in it. But again, you got to be careful because they are glass, they're thin, and they're very fragile. Also very accurate. Now, let's go ahead and go to our next slide here. There it is. Here's our do-it-yourself calibration. Now, again, just talk about the calibration solutions. There's all different types out there, and generally the calibration solutions come 35% PPT or an SG of 1.0264, somewhere around there. I did that with my refractometer. Now, this may not be true with all of them, but with mine, I ended up getting bad readings because I was calibrating at 35% when I should have been using a different method. We're going to talk about that again in just a second. However, if you want to make your own calibration solution, you can get this off the internet. It's in a lot of Facebook pages and forums on the internet, Reef to Reef and other ones. It makes up a solution of 3.714 sodium chloride solution that matches, of course, 35 parts per trillion or an SG value of 1.064 of seawater that you could use to test your hydrometer, your refractometer, or even your Hanna digitals. It does work okay. Again, I would use their brand of solution, but again, you want to do it yourself. I like to do it myself. Here's the solution. So to produce the 3.714 weight percentage of sodium chloride solution, dissolve 1 teaspoon, that's 620 grams of Morton's iodized salt, not generic salt, not Publix brand, Morton's iodized salt, and 161 milliliters or 161 grams of fresh water, that being distilled or RODI water. It'll make a total solution of about 163 milliliters after dissolution of the salt inside of course, the liquid. And you can scale it up as you need to. And that'll give you an SG of 1.0264 or 35 parts per million. You may want to take a screenshot of this or pause your video and write that down so you can make up your own solution at home. It works good. I've tried it quite a few times when I ran out of solution just to make sure, but it always hits right on the money. So let's go to our next slide. Now we're going to talk about refractometers. Now, I bought this one, you can see, back in 2020, 5 years ago. And I've used it with no problems until a few months back. It works great. There's a more expensive one you can get out there. In fact, we're going to talk about one that Reef Casa sells. Excellent. It's got a cool little wood box in it. It's a really nice refractometer, especially if you have a nice tank in your living room and you're showing your stuff off. Beautiful case that it comes in. And I'm going to put a video up of that in just a second. However, the bargain basement ones can work just fine if you clean them and calibrate them and use them the way you're supposed to. Now, this one, again, I bought for $17, $16.99 on Amazon. Get free shipping when you order on Amazon. I like that. It worked fine, but all of a sudden, a couple of months ago, my coral started looking a little stressed. So I did all the testing, magnesium, calcium, alkalinity, phosphate, nitrates, everything looked fine. However, they didn't look good. So I sent in an ICP test, and my results came back here. And I was recommended that my salinity was 31.7 PSU, which is very low. I thought, how could that be? I check my salt constantly. I do water changes every week. I double check the salt in the tank, the salt in the water change solution. How could that be? But looking at it, if you look at my elements here, my sulfur is way low, 638 milliliters. My potassium is way low, 151 milliliters, and both of them combined were about 15% lower than where they should be, which means, of course, the calculated salinity was 15% lower than it should be. So instead of measuring in around 33 or 34, it was at 31. So I took a sample of my water, I brought it to Boardroom Aquatics in Fort Myers. Mark checked it on his Hanna tester. He's like, bro, you're 31%, you're way low on your salt. And I thought, well, there's something wrong with my refractometer. So I went back. Of course, I started correcting my salt issue right away because that's bad news. But when I looked at the refractometer and I went back to my instructions, I'll show you, I was calibrating it wrong. Now, I was using 35% solution that I bought on Amazon, which is a quality name brand solution. But my refractometer tells me to put 2 or 3 drops of distilled water on the prism, then close the diffuser and calibrate it to 0. Distilled water, not 35% solution. So the solution I was using and I was calibrating to that solution was causing me to get a false reading. So what did I do? Well, I went back, I recalibrated with the RODI water. I checked my water, sure enough, 31%. It matched the Hanna test. So what did I do? Well, I started calibrating my refractor right. So the thing is that you have to use the right solution or the right method that goes along with the equipment that you buy. And if you go out on your own without double checking, you could end up making the mistake I made and have false readings. Now, no damage was done. I brought my salt back up slowly. Everything came up. My ICP test come back nice. Everything is just fine now, of course. However, if I would have made that mistake for too long, I definitely would have lost some corals and done some serious damage. One other thing about the refractometers is that you have to use them correctly. You have to make sure that when you put water on the prism and then you close the light diffuser, that there's no air bubbles between the light diffuser and the prism. Also, make sure that when you put water on the prism, your test water, and you close the diffuser, that there is no room between the two of them. Water does have surface tension, and when you first close it, it could ride on the top of the water and you have too much water between the diffuser and the prism. You got to push it down, maybe tap it to make sure it's nice and flat and it's not literally riding on a bed of water, and that will happen if you're not careful, especially with a saline solution. So make sure it's tested right. When you're done with your refractometer, you have to clean it with RODI water. Clean the top, clean the prism, clean the diffuser, wipe it down really nice, put it away in a nice safe place. Make sure that when you're calibrating it, you calibrate it with the solution that it recommends using. So very important. And I want to show you just only because I really like Reef Casa. One, they do great videos. I appreciate their videos. And two, this is really a nice diffuser. And again, it comes with a pretty cool box. That looks good, you know, wooden box with it etched in the side, Reef Casa. It's very easy to use and clear. It's easy to adjust. It's also an automatic temperature control system in it. And I think there's a video here somewhere. I'm pretty sure I saw one. Let me go back here. Here it is. Yeah, very cool. So as refractors go, or refractometers go, Reef Casa does have a pretty nice one. It's for 80 bucks. You can buy it at their website. And they have some great videos too. So if you're in YouTube and you want to see some cool stuff, if you go to, what is it? Reef, Coral Box. Oh, Frag Box. I'm sorry, Reef Casa. The guys that do Frag Box own Reef Casa, the same guy. And I'm not going to get into plugging his stuff or anything. He asked me to. He doesn't have to. He just has a great product that we like to use. So anyway, just something to think about. Make sure you get your refractometers, refractometers calibrated right, clean right, used right. If you're using any kind of a digital or another type of hydrometer, make sure you use the reagent or the testing solution that goes with that. And if you get one of the floating hydrometers that are made out of glass, be super careful that you don't break it because they're very fragile. Appreciate your time. You folks have a wonderful day. There'll be links down here in the bottom of the YouTube video so that you can buy any of this from Amazon. And be sure to subscribe and like our videos. We appreciate your support. We at FishyFins will see you in your reef tanks. Have a great day.